Hi, welcome to the Get Strong and Healthy podcast. My name is Anna Cloud. Thank you for being here. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, my mentor, Nick Komodina. Nick is a conscious leadership and business coach. Thank you for joining me today, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Anna. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, so Nick, could you share with us what is conscious leadership and what does, being a business coach mean for the people who might not know what that is?
Sure. Yeah. Business coach, to keep that pretty simple. I coach people on how to create a business. And we do things a little bit more in the conscious leadership route, where we're making sure that people are really creating something that feels authentic and in alignment with who they really are, what they're here to do in the world, who they're here to serve, and really finding that deeper soul mission, the thing that makes them feel alive, and kind of finding that universal truth that they feel they need to deliver into the world and using their business as a vehicle to do that. Conscious leadership is really, I use the comparison of Hitler versus Jesus all the time to talk about this. Both incredible leaders by definition, one potentially not as conscious as the other. And if we look at the story and the concept of Jesus, and I say it that way so that we remove any sort of religious blocks, because everybody knows the concept of Jesus, this man who is the, quote unquote, walking embodiment of God. He only sees how to love people. He only sees how to serve people and build them up. That to me is conscious leadership. And that's what I think we need more of in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, Nick is the only business coach I've come across, and I've definitely watched the industry that takes this spin that actually feels right for me. And so very grateful to have you as, the leader in my life. So
Grateful to have you back.
yeah. So could you share with our listeners a bit about your story and how you became an entrepreneur, kind of your personal story and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up, I had kind of the 8 Mile Eminem story. I grew up in a trailer park with my mom and was not very financially equipped going into the world. I learned really early on that money was scarce, that we needed to save it, we needed to stretch it, spend it on certain things. And there was also this part of me that just looked at the way the world was working, the way that the game was being played by everybody. And I had this internal urge to consistently rebel against it. I couldn't get into the school system and conform. I couldn't get a normal job and conform. I was always doing more than what was expected of me. And I was being penalized for it everywhere. And it just made no sense to me. Nobody, it felt like my superiors and my supervisors were literally upset at me because I was doing more than what was asked of me. And I just could not understand that concept for the life of me. And I started personal training. I fell in love with fitness. I was a really skinny kid, didn't know anything about it. Asked a personal trainer at the gym one day if he could show me how to use a machine, and he told me it was going to be $175 for him to do so. And I am a super stubborn son of a bitch. And the second he did that, my whole demeanor changed. And I was basically told myself, I'm going to learn everything about fitness just to say fuck you to this guy. That was my only reason I did it. And so I got really good out of spite for this man. And that's been long gone, but I really fell in love with fitness and helping people change and develop. And I started as a personal trainer, and then I worked at a gym, and then he fired all of us, and I had no choice but to open a gym. That was kind of like I didn't really choose entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship really chose me. Leadership really chose me. I didn't want it. I really didn't. And even to this day, I'm still like, is this really what I want to do? Is this really the magnitude of responsibility I want to have? And yeah, I really got thrown into it, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the path, but I knew my old boss. I knew exactly what I didn't want to be. I knew Hitler as leadership, and I didn't know Jesus at the time conceptually. I didn't understand that side, but I knew what it felt like to be under somebody who was a Hitler. So I just went, I'm going to go the opposite direction. And I fucked up a lot. Still do. I closed the gym down after 3 years. I ended up doing online fitness coaching, grew and scale my income to about $4 million a year. I mean, I was absolutely crushing it, to be honest. I had more money than I knew what to do with. It was all organic, no ads, no DMers, no funnels, no anything. It was just me, my message, my brand, and my results. And throughout that time, I was just chasing money. I was chasing money because I was chasing love. And I thought that the more money I made, the more worthy of love I would be. And I mean, as most people in my space know, that chase never gets anywhere. So the more money I made, the less lovable I felt. The more mistakes I made, the more shame and guilt I experienced, the more scarcity I experienced. And it just didn't make any sense. And I was in a really toxic relationship at the time. She was sleeping with my best friends, and I didn't even have the worthiness of myself to walk away. So I just kind of accepted it and pretended it wasn't happening. And eventually it all came crashing down, and I didn't know who I was anymore without that life that I had falsely created in the false happiness I had convinced myself was real. So I went out into my backyard in Houston, Texas, and held a gun to my head and was ready to pull the trigger. And I heard some voice tell me no. And through that whole experience, I kind of had my coming to God moment, moved back to San Diego, decided it was finally time after 10 years as an entrepreneur to really sit with myself and actually do the work that I was pretending I was doing and telling everyone else to do. And so I finally did this deep, scary shadow work, inner work, healing work, self acceptance, self love that I thought was just going to tear me to pieces. And it really made me so whole. And it's a work in progress. Obviously, I still have so much work to do, and I'm really excited to do it. But through that, through some stillness finally in my life, I allowed so much to catch up. I allowed so much to integrate. I allowed myself to let go and forgive of so many people, myself included. And as I started getting my energy back, the veil kind of started lifting on what I thought life was about, what I thought business was about. And I started seeing a new path kind of illuminating for me. And there was really only one or two steps that I could see, but those were the only steps I could see. And so I knew I couldn't stay where I was. I knew I couldn't see the full path in front of me. I just knew I saw these two steps and I need to start walking and really let faith do the rest. And that led me to, opening the mastermind. And then that led me to scaling all of the work that I do now for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. And I mean, in that short of time, we've really created such a powerful movement, such an incredible community. And I'm so blessed for what I've been able to create once I finally stopped trying to prove myself to the world and I started trying to serve the world.
Mic drop. Talk about a hero's journey. So transitioning a little bit into our topic of today. So setting the stage a little bit, Strong and Healthy's brand belief is that a happier world starts with healthier women. And shout out to Nick for helping me, really forcing me to get clear.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
To really get clear on this. Super, always grateful for the nudges from you. But so, unfortunately, many women can be their own biggest hurdle in getting healthier. And so, Nick, you've worked with many women along, in the health and fitness world, in
Too many.
business world. And so what do you see are like the biggest things where like women in particular hold themselves back from transforming their body and health or transforming their business? And, why do you think that we do this?
Yeah. It's a good question. There's a lot of layers to it for sure. I think the I think the biggest layer, which I think is going to confuse a lot of people at first, is that it's really a collective masculine wound. It's in men and it's in women. And just like you said, your ethos is healthier world, healthier women. Right? That has to start first. And I believe that if we heal the masculine, we heal the feminine. So if we heal the masculine, we heal the world, basically. And so it's interesting. We have, two visions, two sides of the same coin, really. And we need that. We need people doing both. But when we look at women who have convinced themselves they need to be everything for everyone, women who've convinced themselves nobody does this, I have to get it done myself, they don't let themselves get taken care of anymore because they derive their value from doing. I'm only valuable if I'm doing this for my husband, doing this for my kids, doing this for my clients. Well, where's your value if you just sit? Where's the value if you just allow yourself to be taken care of? For a lot of women maybe listening to this, that there's a lot of anxiety all of a sudden. Maybe there's this interesting activation in your chest, or your stomach gets in a little bit of a knot and your heart's beating a little bit just thinking about if you were to stop caregiving for a day. That's a problem. So what happens is a lot of women, and I don't want to generalize, but just for sake of conversation, I'm going to say some things that are generalized. And so just bear with me. I'm just using it to get a point across. Most women have been wounded by the masculine at some point in their life, whether this was a father that wasn't emotionally available, a father that only praised them if they were doing good in school or doing good in sports. So, okay, my love is now linked to my performance. My worthiness of love is linked to what I'm accomplishing in the external world. Or maybe your first partner cheated on you and told you it was because you didn't do enough from him for him. There's all of these things. Maybe you have a boss that's super condescending because he doesn't understand how to feel powerful. So he only feels powerful by making all the women around him feel small and insignificant because he has a feminine wound that hurt him. So it's the only way he stays safe. So you see, it just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. And there's actually nobody at fault. There's no root person. There's no, and it's just a collective understanding. We got to heal the masculine and we got to heal the feminine. And we got to remove the labels of it was this person, it was that person. So women are holding up this masculine shield for the most part. And they're saying, I don't trust the masculine anymore. So I can't be my feminine. I can't relax. I can't flow. I can't release after work. I can't take a breath. I can't have fun. I can't play. And then we wonder why all of these women are starting to feel unaligned with their lives, or they're starting to feel very anxious, or they don't have any recharge time. They're mentally exhausted. They're starting to subconsciously resent their kids. They're starting to subconsciously resent their husbands because they're resenting themselves. And they don't want to, they can't speak it because I'm not supposed to resent my kids. That's awful. Well, it's not that it's your kids, it's that it's you in your hyper masculine because you don't know how to be your feminine self anymore. And it's detrimental to everything that you do. They probably resent their business to a degree as well. Everywhere that you look in a life of a woman like this feels like a prison.
Oof. I can hardcore relate to that being me for a long time. And there was nothing more powerful in my journey than, I guess you would call it, like healing that masculine wound and sort of like integrating my femininity again, like actually taking rest, actually unplugging from work, actually having fun, actually feeling like led and taken care of, and like not like I have to do everything myself. And so, like, where do you think healing this begins? Where do you think, a woman who's in this state, what can she do? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, I again gonna have to generalize here because everybody's gonna have a slightly process, different parts of their journey. I would say the safest place to start is a step of awareness. And really, what awareness looks like is instead of just being the reaction, instead of just having the chip on your shoulder, instead of just having the internalized story that nobody actually cares about me, I have to do everything, it's not going to get done, I'm this for everybody else, nobody cares how I'm doing, and it's just catching it next time and just stopping for a second and saying, is this actually me? Is this actually the life that I've created for myself? Do people actually not care about me? Or do I, without realizing it, keep everybody at a distance and I don't express that I need help? I just put on a face that I'm completely fine. So then why would people check on me? It's the story that I'm giving them to reinforce my story that they don't care about me. That's not on them, that's myself. So just that, like little ping pong I just did right there. A woman can do that right now in this moment and have a breakthrough that could change her entire life. The second thing, and maybe that doesn't resonate with you as much, but the next thing that can happen is really a commitment to the act of forgiveness. So there's resentments that we hold on from how my dad spoke to me before I left to college. Or maybe you saw your mom cheat on your father. So now you're worried about relationships. You don't trust love. Or there's all of these things, these fragmentations that have happened throughout our lives that we hold on to. And when we hold on to them, they start to weigh us down. Now we just have this massive energetic signature of resentment. We're looking through the world with eyes that are the shade of red. Everywhere we see it reinforces that we should be resenting men or resenting other women or resenting parents that don't know how to parent their children properly. And so we just start looking for these things to reinforce our anger because we're unwilling to forgive, because to forgive is to let go. And letting go seems really fucking scary when you've been holding that thing in your hand for the last 2 decades. So I think those are really the first two things that anybody at any point of their journey, if you're resonating with anything that's been spoken in the podcast so far, those are the first two things I would really just reinforce. And I think those two right there offer so much healing, so much understanding of the self that if you really dedicate to the awareness and the forgiveness, you will actually call in so much of your energy that you've been giving elsewhere. You'll start to intuitively know what you need next, whether that's hiring a mentor like Anna, whether that's joining a new program, getting back to the gym, or sitting with yourself, cutting somebody off, setting boundaries with your parents. You'll start to intuitively come back to your inner knowing of what you actually need. And you'll stop worrying about if your needs are contradictory to what other people's needs of you are.
Yes. And so awareness being that first step is something I talk about with clients all the time. And I say that gets you halfway there. You know, when you can have that awareness, then you can start to ask yourself, oh, is this thought, is this belief that I'm holding on to, is it true? Just like you're saying. And so that's kind of like the getting curious side of things. And I want to ask you on more of like the, I guess, like leadership side of things. How do you think people could potentially work on like leading themselves better? Like, you know, doing some sort of like self coaching and almost like I look at you as someone who's really amazing at calling people out on their bullshit. And, you know, like, do you think it's important that people learn to like start to do this to themselves? And then, you know, also how could actually, I'll let you answer there. And then I have another question.
Okay. So I think, first of all, to think that we, and maybe this is a level, and maybe I just haven't achieved it yet, but to think that for me, we're with where I'm currently at my evolution of consciousness, I'm not at a state where I can call myself out on every single thing of bullshit that I do and give myself the guidance to get back on track. I fully believe we need people in our lives that we trust for that reason. And that's why it's important to get in the room. It's important to be in a community. It's important to be in the mastermind. And it's important for me to be in other masterminds because I go, I have this mastermind that I just joined a few weeks ago, and I go to them and I say, oh, I'm struggling with this problem. And 8 people in the mastermind go, well, why the fuck don't you just do this? And I go, fuck, I didn't even think about that. And so I don't know what I don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So I think that at first, it's probably worth getting someone that you trust or even hiring someone that you trust to ping pong things off of so you do get called out on your own bullshit. We have the voices in our heads. Most people have the inner critic and it's turned up all the way to 10. So that higher self, that real intuitive voice that you used to be able to hear and listen and be so in touch with, that volume's down to a 2. So having somebody who can see your inner critic and say, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to do this. All of a sudden, in that moment, inner critic turns down to a 9, and this turns up to a 3. And you go, yeah, there was a part of me that knew that was the answer. I just needed you to say it. And that's what's so amazing about the truth. Someone tells you the truth, there's a part of you deep down, locked away somewhere, that responds physiologically. You feel a sensation in your body when somebody tells you the truth. And that's why people are so receptive to it if you deliver it from a space of love. They go, oh, fuck, you got me. Now that voice is up a little bit more. So over time, if we can turn that inner critic down to a 4 and all of a sudden the intuitive voice is back up to a 5, I could, in theory, leave somebody alone at that point on. And if they just listen, then the intuitive will come back to a 10, inner critic will come down to a 0. Now we're humans. We have egos. We like the path of comfort. So it's too easy for us to let the inner critic turn back up to a 10, because what happens the first time we make a mistake? We invalidate every win, every good thing we've done up until that point. What happens if we do something good? Nothing. We still reinforce the bad thing that we did. So this is a ingrained thought pattern collectively for us that we need to heal. That I've done these bad things, so I need to do X amount, 10 times the amount of good things to make up for the bad thing that I've done. But the second I do one bad thing, it invalidates the 10 times good things that I've done. That's backwards. It really is. So we have to learn to just change the conversation and get our nervous systems calibrated to actually just accepting that we have the ability to be good people, and we don't have to keep ourselves in this shame prison of being small for making mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And having the external guidance, I learned this from Jeremy Griffin. He said, go 20% outwards, but then 80% go
Mhm.
inwards. And I think that that's so key to, some people aren't looking outwards. They get stuck in their ways. They're not even open to that leadership, that accountability. And then no wonder, we're stuck in the same patterns. We're not growing, we're not evolving. Because some of these things that, I'll like ask you these questions and it feels like, oh, like duh, but we just get in our own way. We,
Yep.
have these like distorted thoughts. And then the minute that maybe confirm something to me or make me think about something a different way, I'm able to move forward in this whole like, little upgraded level of consciousness a little bit. And you stack that up over time, day in, day out, keep doing that. That's how you grow. And so, how do you think that someone who is not who's not like even open to leadership or accountability, but they also like want to be getting better. They say that, but then they're not actually like opening up. Like, where do you think a disconnect is there?
Well, it's anytime I myself am stuck somewhere and I refuse to get the guidance and leadership to get me unstuck, we really could just chunk it up and say that's the ego. And everyone, myself included, has an ego. It is the human dysfunction. As long as you are human, you will be confined to the constructs of your ego. And the ego evolves with us. That's why we gotta be really cautious. We gotta really be able to intuitively tap into the sensations physically when the ego is present. Otherwise, it'll convince you that it's you, and you'll start to make decisions that aren't in your best interest. So somebody who says, I'm stuck, I haven't been, maybe somebody comes to you and says, I'm 60 pounds overweight. I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. And you say, okay, cool. Well, we can train 4 days a week plus nutrition. Here's the rate. And she says, well, I think I'm gonna try to do it on my own first. I'm gonna try to lose 20 pounds, then I'll come sign up. And you're gonna sit there in the back of your head saying, freaking ding dong, you've been trying this for 5 years. You're obviously not going to lose weight before you come to me. You've been trying that. That's why we're even talking in the first place. But the second it comes time for us to step in the water and start swimming through the void from who we believe ourselves to be into that new version of ourselves, getting people in the water, if we can solve that, we solve humanity. So it's a difficult one, and the answer is going to be different for every type of person. So when there's that resistance or that reluctance to get leadership or guidance, really it's I don't know who I am without the construct of this story and identity I've created for myself to remain small. And I know, or I should say, my ego knows that if I get the guidance from somebody who is quote unquote further along than me, they're going to give me no choice but to break out of this story that I've used to create this false sense of safety. So the ego would rather you play small. So it convinces you to make the decisions to reinforce that.
Oh my gosh, bars, as they say.
They do say bars a lot. That's like the mastermind word.
Yes. Yeah. And I look back at my journey and I like to think, oh, I've been so good at, avoiding playing small and, continuing to grow, which is true. But also I look back and I see these like little ways where my ego did keep me small. And
Mhm.
it's crazy how sometimes you are unaware of it. Our ego does all these little tricks to, make us to convince us to play it safe. And yeah, so that's a big one that I find that, sometimes you want to help someone so much, but if they're not open to, wanting it and trying to get it from you and, looking at you, wanting accountability, wanting that leadership, it's like, I don't like to say, oh, can't help them, but it's definitely a big hurdle.
That is, and I know a lot of your audience is business owners, and that is one of the biggest internal struggles of a leader that cares about people is caring about people more than they care about themselves. And sometimes you have to just let someone burn. Sometimes you just need to let, and I talk about this to you guys all the time. I will let my students have their experience. I will let you struggle. I will let you lose your sense of self. I will let you crumble if I see that that's the path that you need and I can't help you. I will not try to force somebody out of a path that's meant for them. Sometimes people come in, sign agreements, and in 2 months they go, I can't do this. And I say, well, you need to. And they don't. And they ghost and they want to cancel. And I have contracts. And if you want to cancel, this is what it looks like. And people will pay a year of membership to get out of transforming their lives. To me, that's insane. To them, that's the only option because they're so terrified of change.
Yeah.
And it's hard because my ego takes a hit. I want to be able to save and change everyone. And I used to internalize it so hard when somebody would come in and do that. I'm a bad coach. I need to change my whole program. I need to, all we lose one bad person who's not a fit. And then we say, I need to change my entire program because of this one client that's not even with me anymore. And it's hysterical, but that's also a trick that our ego plays on us.
And right before this, I was listening to your podcast with Kelly that you did. And so
Mhm.
shout out to the Headstrong podcast. You guys should go listen to that podcast. You guys are talking all about, the flips and tricks and hoops that people like try and do to, get out of a commitment that they made to, their program,
So,
more so themselves.
you know,
And we find that that's oftentimes a way that people, want to play small, like we're talking about. So yeah, I was just thinking that was just such an interesting conversation. I was literally listening to about 30 minutes ago.
yeah, people's names mean so little to them now. And that's a really crazy concept. I think if we really paint it that way, we have the right conversation when it comes to agreements, contracts, whatever you want to call it, is you put your name on this line. You put your name behind your efforts into this program, into your future, and now you're backing out of that. What do you think that's going to do to your self trust? What do you think that's going to do to your self worth? What do you think that's going to do to the identity that you create for yourself? Is that going to reinforce you to grow smaller, or I'm sorry, grow bigger or stay smaller? There has to be consequences for not keeping promises that we make to ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to keep not doing it.
Literally, and you said in the podcast, this is like, how is this pattern showing up in your life with your day-to-day actions and,
Mm.
the promises you're breaking with yourself. And then, you're going to do this with a program. It's like, that's how the cycle repeats itself.
Yep. Yeah. I'm going to make a commitment to change. And now it feels a little uncomfortable. So I'm going to, oh, by the grace of God, all of these things just popped up in my life. I can no longer do this program. My father's uncle just passed away and the medical bills are crazy and I have to pay for them all. No, you don't. No, I'll tell you what, you call your mortgage company, you tell them the same thing. And whatever their answer is to you, That's my answer to you.
Yep, because just like you said, like we, we're the face of our brands and our companies. And so people look at a person, they go, oh, I can, manipulate them or they're gonna feel bad for me. And so, but
Because
it's like,
people
yeah, it's a business and there's a contract for a reason.
people are used to manipulating people to get their way. So it's no different when they sign up with you because you are Anna, you are a person, you are the face. And to them, you're the person that they're paying. So therefore, you're the person who can get their money back. You're like, no, I actually work for my business. I am the spokesperson for my business. I am the upholder of the contract. I am not the contract, but I can try to guilt and shame you. I can go give you a bad review. I could go start a Reddit thread about you and talk about how you're a scam artist and all you care about is money. And that's what we do because that's our way of getting justice on the person who held us to a standard that we made a commitment to that we were actually unwilling to uphold.
Talk about not having better things to do with your time.
Hey,
Um,
pop off, sis. That's why your life looks like that and mine looks like this.
so have like one more kind of question for you. It's kind of about this, but transitioning to the business side of things. You mentioned at the mastermind event that I attended a month ago.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 weeks ago.
You mentioned, you're like one of the most, frustrating things and something I'm still trying to figure out is like why people come in and, they say they want this, they say they're all in, but then they don't do the work. So is there anything more, on top of what we're talking about that you've maybe like sat with and kind of come up as like the driver for this?
Yeah. So I chunked that down because basically the question is, why do people sign up for a program and then back off and not engage and not do what is required of them to be successful in the program? And if we boil that down, it's a perseverance issue. We lack perseverance. I think a lot of this, not all, a lot of this can be linked to the immense stimulus that we have nowadays. People can't go more than 5 minutes without their focus shifting. People are working on their computer and then pick up their phone to scroll on Instagram. Every time I walk into a public bathroom and I see men at the urinal, every single man is peeing with his member in one hand and his phone in the other hand. And they're all looking down at their phone while they're peeing. It's going to take you 30 seconds. What if you drop your phone in the urinal? That's so gross. There's backsplash, that's going by your face. So there's a lack of perseverance. There's a lack of being able to hold yourself in a even just a state of focus once something gets uncomfortable or difficult. That's really what perseverance is. It's pushing through once you reach that state of discomfort. We can't do that anymore. Everything is pampered and handed to us. We're like, I can't sleep unless my apartment's on 68. I have my Tempur-Pedic mattress. The white noise machine is on. I have my nose strips and I have my gelatin tabs on my eyes. And so you look at this and you go, really? You can't sleep without all of that? So what is not reluctant reliance on immense comfort that is just creating this massive entitlement in front of everybody? So entitlement is a counterforce to perseverance. So the more entitled a person is, the less perseverance they're going to have. The more perseverance a person has, the less entitlement they're going to have. So really, I think the equation is how do we pull somebody down from being entitled? And that by nature increases their perseverance. So that might be a conditioning issue. We might need to do exposure therapy to them, which in a large part is why I coach the way that I coach inside of the mastermind. People ask me questions and I say, I don't know. You tell me. People ask me for a sheet that I posted 2 weeks ago. I go, I don't know. It's probably in the Slack somewhere because I no longer spoon feed people. I used to think that that was me being a leader, a good leader. Anything you want, servant leadership. No, I'm not serving them. I'm creating codependency on my students. I can't do that because that's making them more entitled and they're not persevering. I get it. I I give you guys a lot of shit to do. I get it. But if you don't do that, there are consequences now. There isn't a handhold if you miss the things that were asked of you. So that to me is kind of the conditioning stance that we need to have with people if we want to remove entitlement so that we can increase perseverance.
Oh yes, because the story is, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do this, and then their screen time is like, you know,
9 hours.
yeah, what are you actually doing with your time? It's like being truly real with yourself. If you truly do not have the time, and I think so many people carry that story, and it's like, sure, some people are like truly like fully packed to the brim and they don't have the capacity for more, but like really looking in the mirror and like, how much time are you spending just, mindlessly scrolling and depleting your focus and your creative energy?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I, we talked about this in the mastermind. Is last month I was having kind of a bit of that conversation with my sales team, and they were saying leads aren't as warm, we're not closing as many deals, and there's not enough time to put in work. And I said, okay, I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna do my own DMs. I'm gonna do my own sales calls this month on top of my 11-hour call days with zero gaps, me waking up to train, me doing Slack messages at the end of the day, and also trying to balance my life so I don't go fucking insane. And in that month, any little pocket that I had, I was in my DMs. I was taking sales calls while I was eating breakfast. I would take sales calls while I was in the car. And I ended up doing like $140,000 in sales with no, I truly, by definition, if you looked at my calendar, had no time to do it. And I did it because I said I was going to do it. And when I sent that back to my sales team, they're doing a lot better now. I'll tell you that much. But this concept of I don't have the time to do it. No, you're just not effective with your time. You have a time block in your schedule. Actually, most people, when they say they're too busy, I say, let me see your time block. What's that? You actually have no idea. It's like the person who comes, you goes, I've tried everything to lose weight. Do you track your food? No, I don't want to do that. Oh, I can't imagine why you're overweight. That's crazy. It's like a broke person coming up and saying, I can't save money. And you go, well, do you track your spending? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, then you're going to stay broke. The concept is the same universally, wherever we look at it.
Yeah. And something I've really learned along my journey is to look at, I say like triggers are my gifts. And I think a lot of the time people get triggered and, oh, that's an immediate sign that I need to retreat, or this isn't for me. This is, but I try to look at every single one of my triggers and say, okay, what am I learning from this? What am I going to take from this? And Nick, you triggered the shit out of me, like hardcore. Like the first week I came to the mastermind, I did like a little check-in and you were like, Anna, how how are you not going to show up for your business in this way? And I was like on the verge of tears, but I sat with it and it ended up being an amazing, thing that I got from you, and I think, maybe a lot of people would take something like that and be like, okay, this isn't for me. I have to back out right now. But yeah, like kind of shifting your mindset about like when you do feel uncomfortable and you feel triggered by someone, like it's about you and not them.
Yeah. Never let a trigger go to waste. Never let a trigger go to waste. Because on the other side of that is growth, is healing, is awareness, is understanding. Never let one go to waste.
Yeah, literally, like I almost feel like I seek them out. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
seek out like, being challenged. And that's really how you're gonna grow. Boom. Love it. Let's leave it there. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming on the show today. Do you have anything you want to, leave our listeners with, or where they can find you?
Well, my name is Nick Komodina on all platforms. I'm sure my name will be on the notes somewhere. You just look that up on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. Happy to chat, happy to support whatever I can. I think the last thing I can add to all the women, entrepreneur, moms, people here is that the greatest thing you can do for anybody in your life, especially your kids, is to heal because you are showing them directly and indirectly what life is supposed to look like based on how you're showing up. Even if you're not outwardly saying it, kids can feel and see resentment, frustration, anger, heaviness, all of it. So if you don't take the time to let that go, if you don't take the time to heal, if you don't take the time to develop as a leader, you're going to eventually take off that trauma backpack that your mom gave you, and you're going to have to watch your kids wear it. And you're going to watch them have all the same cycles and more.
Love it. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks for
Talk to
having me.
everyone in the next